Hey guys, this is Emily, and you are about to watch the opening clip from episode number 13 of Playing the Glass Bead Game with myself and Michael Wan. Um, I really enjoyed this episode. It was a pretty long one, and it felt kind of special because it feels like it's an episode that brings us to a place where I think we have a clear understanding of some things that we had been sort of suspecting or tending towards, but like something about the events of the last couple of weeks and the way we sort of pulled them together in this episode, I think gives us a lot of information and should make things very interesting moving forward. As usual, we covered quite a bit of a variety of topics. We talked a good bit about alchemy. We talked about Millersville, which is a town that Michael, focuses on a lot in his work. We talked about Sator squares, magic squares, Sudoku, types of travel, and we gave some recounting of recent experiences in my life that have sort of clustered around having received a very interesting gift in the mail that seemed to be omnidirectional in its ability to see through the looking glass. Let's look at it that way. We connected quite a bit of, we did a lot of dot connecting in this one. We talked about just synchronicity after synchronicity after synchronicity. Some of it tended towards the creepy. We did some talking of watches and time travel devices and whatnot. And all in all, it was a really fun and cool and interesting episode. So here's the clip, and I hope you will enjoy it. If you would like to become a member of Project Kids, which is where we play the glass bead game, you can do so at patreon.com/offplanetmedia. That gives you access to all of the content we create, access to the cafe or the social club where we have informal meetings and play the game, and also some additional content is generated from the cafe experience. You can do that by joining the Project Kids level there at Patreon, or if you're just interested in receiving the content, which would be all of the patron content for Project Kids and then all of the glass bead game content, you can do that at projectkids.locals.com. or you can contact me by email for purchase of individual episodes. If you would like to receive a complimentary episode of Playing the Glass Bead Game, you can contact me, and I'm happy to give you access to whichever episode you like. You can pick one that was the one that sort of appealed to you the most. If it happens to be this one's pretty interesting. This might be a fun one for people. Or you can get the first one so you get a good understanding of like what the game is and how we're playing. But I'm happy to give you a complimentary episode or a complimentary day at the cafe if you would like to see how the interactive aspect of this works. Just contact me. My email address is in the description box below. And have a great day and enjoy the clip. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. Michael Wan is here. He is the co-star joint billing of the show. Do I have
co-host?
Let me know when I have it right.
Co-host.
That's right, co-host. Yes. Co-host.
Or what do they call the stars that go around each other?
The stars that go around?
Like Sirius A and Sirius B, there's a name for that. Two stars.
See if you can find out what that is.
Like it's a common name, like in star stuff. Are they called by something stars?
Okay. So I always think
that's what we are. So we're not co-stars. We're like those.
We're binary stars.
Binary. We're a binary star system.
Binary star system. I always think of us as tennis players engaged in a very entertaining match, right? That where the point isn't necessarily for one to win and the other to lose, but to create the most amount of excitement and entertainment and oohs and ahs and all of that stuff as possible.
All right. I like that too. Which I think is probably binary star systems.
There we go. Oh, this is episode number 13 of Playing the Glass Bead Game, Mike. We're at number 13, and this will be a very 13 style episode.
All right. I'm not certain what the 13th style means, but I'm kind of excited to find out what
I
it
think
is.
there's some people that think 13 is an ominous number. Others say, no, it really is like a very lucky or meaningful number. And they just want you to be scared of it. And that's why they make, Friday the 13th and whatever, right? But whatever it is, it's like people generally like 13.
It's charged.
It's charged.
It has a charge that 14 doesn't have.
Correct. And
14 is like, no one even cares about 14.
Well, here, and people certainly don't like 12 because they always feel the need to add one more to a dozen to make it a baker's dozen, right? No one's ever satisfied with 12. They want the fucking 13th one, right? When you go for donuts or bagels or whatever.
And tell me if this is correct, because I'm good in the kitchen, but I'm not good with baking. Like baking's not a thing. But I know good bakers. Baking is like that's like quite literally like alchemy. Like you're changing so it's like if the baker's dozen is like the alchemy dozen, right? So now we got tied to 13. And the bad luck 13 story always goes back to the burning of the Templars, right? That's where Friday the 13th comes from. So it's like somehow like it's all like alchemist, whatever, Baphomet folks, however you feel about that, because they're different stories. They tell that story very different way, like whatever feels right. That's what we're touching in with this 13 right now. Yeah,
absolutely. No, baking is fascinating. I was like, I can't remember. I think I was on the way back from visiting either my sister in Boston or Laura when she lived in Colorado Springs. And I was reading, those magazines they have on the airplane in the seats behind you, right?
I know those magazines
have all the like catalog Brookstone stuff in the back. There's actually sometimes a few interesting travel articles or something somewhere in there. And I
love the whole thing. I scour that magazine from like inch to inch. I'm like, they've got people in like a strange position right now and they're forcing them to read. So I'm like, what are they going to make them read? It's the best. But go on with your story.
Do you do the crossword puzzle and the Sudoku puzzle too?
Only Sudoku. I can't ever pronounce it correctly. I'm actually quite good at Sudoku. I can't crossword for the life of me.
I'm good at both of them. I'm good at both of them, but I'm astonishingly good at Sudoku. Like
astonishingly good?
Almost disturbingly. Well, to the point that like if I see the board, my mind starts doing it, right? Even if it's somebody else, if it's the person sitting next to me, like I have to not look because my mind will start doing it if I just see it. And I've come to realize over the years that like Sudoku was part of the programming, like word games, number games, word play, all that kind of stuff, right? But I got into doing the Sudokus where it's like you have one board and then it connects to another one off of it and you use some of the numbers for one and the other one and they're like all these.
I've never even heard that existed.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. There's a name for it, but I got really into it for a while.
So let me ask you this though, like on the regular Sudoku, like if you get a book and like if you get like a good book which has like really hard ones, like they always break them down by levels. Can you do all of the really hard ones?
I can do, I can do most, eventually, yes, right? But I can do most of them pretty quickly. Every once in a while, I'll bump up against one that is a little bit more challenging, but I have a pretty good system that I use to do it.
I got a good system.
Yeah, I got a pretty good system. Every once in a while, I'll bump up against something a little challenging. But the other thing is the speed with which I can do the ones that I can do well, right? Like it's really fast. Right. Like my friend was like, she watched me do it one time. He's like, I started and I was done. You know what I mean?
Okay. So let me ask you this. So, you know what a Rubik's Cube is, right?
Yeah.
All right. Have you ever seen those people who do the Rubik's Cube like in 30 seconds?
Yes.
Like, do you do Sudoku like that?
Some of them. And I can't say, I couldn't sit down and say, you pick any Sudoku in the world and I'll do it that fast. Right. But I can generally do almost all like beginner and medium levels with the very, very short, you know what I mean? Every once in a while.
Within a minute?
Probably most beginner ones for sure.
All right.
Yeah. Like, so, like it just, my mind just sees it and does it. It's interesting. In the last episode I recorded with Michael Walker and Nish, it's not out yet, but we got into talking about magic squares. And I had never really looked into magic squares before. And I realized, this was the purpose of the Sudoku training, was the magic squares. And so
the magic squares, there's something going on there. Same thing with the Sator square too, right? They're very similar. I've converted Sator square to numbers to play around with that.
I had to stop doing Sudoku because it was invading my dreams. I was dreaming of life-size Sudoku boards that I was doing like physical maneuvers on, like solving the puzzle using my body to put the numbers there. and stuff like that, doing different things. I didn't know if these were dreams or if these were some sort of like out of body experience I was having. It was during that very strange period of time in my life where I was like coming to the end of my drug use and the recognition of some of my programming and back and forth between being clean and not clean and whatnot.
This sounds too much like the Queen's Gambit for me.
Well, that's why I connected so tightly to the Queen's
Well,
Gambit.
like imagine had you gone down that path. You're like, I'm just going to commit, like I'm going to enter a Sudoku contest, and like you win the first one, like these big how they had like the chess or contests, and like you turned out to be like the world's greatest Sudoku player, but you could only do it while you were really fucked up. And like that, and that would have been like the path. Like, but you decided, you're like, I didn't want to go down that path because I wanted to be clean. And so it's like, that was the payoff.
Yeah.
That's where the choose your own adventure came into play.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much. So anyway, why were we talking about this?
I have no friggin' idea.
How did we get into this? Number 13.
Okay, so let's go back.
Oh, I know, baking, the alchemy.
Friggin' baking.
So yeah, baking. So I was.
Is that why they say like when you're stoned, you're baked? Like it's all of this whole sort of like.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So back to this magazine on the airplane. I was reading an article about a guy who like used to work in like finance or something like that, right? Or some profession that you and I would have a lot of disdain for, right? And then he like got bored of it or whatever. He wanted to travel or something. And he was like spending the night on someone's couch or something. And this person was into baking like ancient grain sourdough kind of bread, right?
All right.
So he started doing it and he became obsessed with it. Right. And so now he's considered to be one of the top bakers of artisan bakeries in the United States. And he'll spend like hours trying to get just the right seam in his sourdough loaf, like the area where like the crust sort of like spreads out and there's like a point, but then there's like the part of the bread that's like sort of in the old fashioned type of bread, they'd call it the butter top. But in the sourdough bread, it's just that feathery part on top where the crust, right? He was like, the way he was describing it was like the way that you describe the way you like it when you do the sand on the rock thing and you put something on your leather, or exactly how I want to feel like when I'm dancing or when I'm making my cocktail. And I mean, it was like porn for bread crust, right? It was just like, I loved it. I'm like, I think he's in Washington, DC or somewhere outside of DC, his bakery or whatever. I'm like, I have got to taste this bread sometime. That's going to be a religious experience, right?
So like I'm like when it comes to bread, like I'm a tough critic. Like, it's like it.
Me too.
But when I like it, like I know. And so that being said, but I don't know how to bake. So I have this image in my mind of like, in order to make like really, really like good bread, like it has to be done in like this certain sort of like very like romanticized version I have in my head. Right. Mm-hmm. So this is about like 5-6 years ago. And somehow life overlaps me with this woman. Her name was Fabienne, and she was French. I think she moved to the United States like later in life, enough late in life that her accent is very, very strong. Like that's her first language, and this woman was like kind of like witch. So she said that she was going to bake bread in her oven. And I start going in my mind, like, I don't know nothing about no baking, but I do think like most bread doesn't live up to my expectations. And she's like, it's going to be, Michael, it was going to be amazing. You're not even going to believe how beautiful it'll be. That's the kind of how she talks. She's got this real, like, kind of this like it's almost like an old Jewish woman and this French woman talking. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, it's not. I'm like, I'm gonna humor her. But lo and behold, what she made like in 10 minutes from scratch in her like regular, like conventional oven, like was on par with the best breads, like by crust standards, And so I did, there is something like, you know, she demonstrated to me that the magic of the individual is much, much more significant than the power of the tools. Correct. As it relates to the alchemy of baking. So that's my baking story.
Correct. I mean, there are some people who have these like incredible stone wood burning ovens in the perfect environment. And sometimes
that's what I thought you had to have.
I mean, I think sometimes that can be part of it, right? But it also is about the love you put into it, the feelings you're having when you're doing it, like how you do your own little alchemy, both with the ingredients and like what you bring to it. Right? Like what water you use, like there's all kinds of different, there's so many things that can go into it that there's no exact recipe. Like there's no exact recipe that will work for anyone. And there's no, even if you and I baked the exact same recipe, it would come out totally different.
All right. So here's a question. This is Baker Dozen number 13. What are we going to bake today?
All right. Well, today is going to be the Alchemist special for sure.
The Alchemist special.